Channel 127, Monday, December 21st, my friends. In 29 days from now, Donald Trump will be gone. Think about that. In 29 days, Joe Biden will be sitting there in the White House as president, and Donald Trump will be wondering when the first indictment will be handed down to prosecute him. I don't know when that'll be, but I think it's likely, if not definite. Still, Donald Trump is not over. This is not over for Donald Trump and his attempted coup to overturn our election, despite the fact that Bill Barr today, again, reaffirmed there was no widespread fraud in this election. He was asked point blank, is there enough evidence to confiscate or to take control of the election machine? He said no. When asked, is there evidence there to appoint special counsel to investigate election fraud? He said no. Even about Hunter Biden, he said no. But that doesn't stop Donald Trump, because facts don't get in the way of a fascist. Remember that. Facts don't get in the way of a fascist. So what is Donald Trump doing? Well, last night, he had his lawyers file a petition with the Supreme Court again, this time specifically to overturn the election in Pennsylvania, even though there's no basis for it. Even though the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania has ruled on two different cases, one brought by Trump and Rudy Giuliani, and one brought by a Republican congressman who's an ally of Trump, been shot down completely. It doesn't matter. But what's odd is, I say alarming more than odd, in the petition that Trump's lawyers filed, some of the language is a little, as a lawyer myself, I can tell you it's not typical. And it is alarming. I'll read a little bit of it. It said in here, to the court, this is to the Supreme Court, applying to have their case heard to overturn the election. They wrote, finally, if this matter is not timely resolved, not only the petitioner, which is Trump, but the nation as a whole may suffer injury from the resulting confusion, adding, indeed, the intense national and worldwide attention on the 2020 presidential election only foreshadows the disruption that may follow. The disruption that may follow? You have Trump's lawyers threatening in writing to the Supreme Court that there might be disruption. Is that violence? Is that violence by the Proud Boys and Trump supporters to keep him in power? Is that a civil war that Trump dreams of? It's possible. Or is the disruption Trump created, mainly by imposing martial law or using the Insurrection Act to put military in the streets? And typically to say that would be so over the top and so hyperbolic. But in this case, it's the reality of what we're dealing with. On Friday, Donald Trump invited felon Mike Flynn to the White House. Mike Flynn, the man who lied to the FBI. Mike Flynn, before he was invited to the White House, had publicly gone on Twitter and on Newsmax to say that Trump should impose martial law in the battleground states and then have the military run new elections. Yeah, because in democracies, the military runs elections. And so in any event, with that backdrop, Trump rewards him by bringing him to the White House with Sidney Kraken Powell to talk about the election. And in that discussion, in our house, the White House, they brought up the idea of imposing martial law. Think about that for a second. In the White House, Donald Trump had a person there, his former national security advisor, talking to him about suspending our civil liberties, putting the military on the street, suppressing dissent, getting rid of habeas corpus, meaning they could charge you and you have no rights. You don't even have to know the charges against you, to keep Trump in power. If you read about that in any country, would you call that a democracy? Of course not. That's what Donald Trump is trying to do. Now, the reality is martial law, and it's kind of interesting. We all hear the term martial law. It's not defined in the Constitution nor by federal law. It has been imposed by around 68 plus times in the U.S. on our soil by either the federal government or governors or military leaders, even local officials. The reality, though, it's never been imposed by a president who lost an election to overturn an election, because that's not what happens in democracies. That's what happens in fascist places where wannabe fascists want the power. Doesn't matter. Democracy is just a speed bump on the way to power. That's what happens there. And yes, the reporting is it was a heated discussion and some Trumpers pushed back. But let's go back to the original thing. Donald Trump invited into the White House a man who'd been publicly calling for martial law, to have the military go in the street, overturn the election, and then have the military he controls oversee an election. That alone should be sedition. It's not. Technically, under our law, it's not. I know viscerally you're saying that is sedition, but technically it is not yet. We are right on the edge. We're getting there. Now, the reality is, the question is, can Donald Trump impose martial law, even though it's not in the Constitution or by a Supreme Court decision that actually articulates when a president can do it? It's kind of weird that it really has not been considered too often by our Supreme Court. State officials have used it, and they've been able to do it. The most notorious was after Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. Hawaii was not a state, but it was a territory. And there, for 3 years, there was martial law, requiring people to be fingerprinted, allowing the military, not civilian authorities, to run everything from the courts to dealing with the media and everything. Trump's dream come true. That's the most extreme example. It's not too much in the modern era. The modern era really have no examples of it. You have minor things such as using the military, the National Guard, to quell violence, still pockets of it, such as after a hurricane, you might have a semblance of martial law. But it's different than what Trump's calling for. That was just for civilian. That was just for the military to come in and work with civilian authorities, not to rule civilian authorities, and to ensure there was peace and stability. There is, as the Brennan Center, which is a great, it's in New York here, it's sort of a think tank on civil liberties. They do warn that a president does have powers under the Insurrection Act, which is a federal law, to have the military go into the streets and have some control. It's not quite martial law. Civilian authorities still are in control. But for the Insurrection Act, you need an insurrection. We don't have it. We have calm streets. Now, is Trump hoping his Proud Boys and white supremacists and neo-Nazis and other scumbags that support him go on the streets and cause an insurrection? And even though it's his own supporters, then he can say, I must use the Insurrection Act and put that down, and I have to prevent any kind of inauguration. If he did that, and I'm not saying he wouldn't try to do that. I'm not saying he won't sign an executive order to do that. If he did that, it would be unconstitutional. It would be a military coup. There's no disputing it. I don't think our military would be engaged in a coup. Certainly not the leaders. I don't think too many in the rank and file would either, because their loyalty is to the United States of America, not to Donald Trump. So I think he fails there, but it could cause great instability in our nation. It could cause pockets of violence. I'm not saying we're going there. In my heart, I really don't think we're going to go there at all. But do you doubt for a second if Donald Trump could do it? He would. Do you doubt for a second Donald Trump, if he could have the military go on the street and stop us from dissenting and keep himself as president? He would. And let me add something more. Do you doubt his own base would support him doing just that? I don't mean all Republicans. I mean his base. Look what we're seeing. We have the My Pillow guy, Mike Lindell, tweeting Saturday night, calling for Trump to impose military law, martial law, to overturn the election. We have a Republican member of Congress from Louisiana who didn't quite go all the way for martial law, but he said, if Biden is inaugurated as the 46th president, the United States on January 20th, it will mark the final hour of conspiracy to dismantle the American election process and the first hour of the conspiracy to dismantle America. That's Congressman Clay Higgins. That's a U.S. member. That's a member of Congress. Any doubt he would support martial law? Any doubt the 126 members of Congress and the 17 Republican AGs who supported Trump's coup attempt with the Supreme Court would be on board? Of course they would be. You know, today there was a rally in Georgia. Ivanka Trump was there for the Senate candidates. And what did they chant? They chanted, fight for Trump. Fight for Trump. Listen to those words closely. Fight for Trump. Not fight for the United States of America. Not fight for America. Not fight for the U.S. Constitution. Fight for Trump. That is where their loyalty lays. It is with Donald Trump. I'm not saying they're traitors to the United States. I'm telling you, in a choice between our Constitution and Donald Trump, I have to believe that his base, the core base, I'm not sure what number that would be. Is it 20, 30%? It's hard to say. That core base would support a coup. That core base would support throwing our Constitution out and making Donald Trump president for life, because that's what we were dealing with here. We're going through a difficult time. We have 1 month left. Trump will do everything he can. He'll burn it down. He doesn't care who dies, because you see every day we have 2,000 to 3,000 Americans dying, more last week, several days than on 9/11, and Trump doesn't care. Doesn't care how many die. Trump cares about power. His base, they're on board. This is a time for America. We're going to look back. Historians will look back at this and be stunned by what they saw. They're going to say, There was a courageous generation that stood up to save this nation from a wannabe fascist. It's not over. Trump is going to be gone January 20th. People who are not loyal to our Constitution are among us. They live among us, and hopefully we can just drive them back to the margins. They can think what they think as long as they don't act on it violently. It's America. If you hate our Constitution, you hate America, you can live here. We're not going to say love it or leave it. It's not like that. As long as you don't act violently, you can believe whatever you want. So Trumpers, if they want to hate this country, if they want to be loyal to Trump over the Constitution, that's their choice. And I'll defend that. They have that right to think that. But if they act on it, then they're going to be prosecuted. Then we get into sedition, because the sedition law only applies to the government of the United States of America. That means you need Joe Biden sworn in. Then it's sedition. So thanks for tuning in. We'll talk about this much more on my show, and I really want to hear from you. If you're already subscribed to SiriusXM, call in from 6 to 9 p.m., channel 127 on Progress. If you don't, go to SiriusXM website. There are free trials. Join it. Sign up for a free trial. Join for a few weeks, a month. It doesn't cost you anything. No credit card. And call into my show. Be a part of our family. We've got a lot of work to do, my friends. Thanks for tuning in.